Welcome. In this video, we are going to introduce the basics of risk assessment, and we will cover things like what is a risk assessment, how to perform a risk assessment, as well as why we perform a risk assessment. Risk assessments are a systematic process of identifying hazards and evaluating any associated risks within a workplace. In addition, risk assessments typically involve assigning some form of measurement of risk to each hazard. This involves deciding how likely it is that someone could be harmed, which is likelihood, and how serious it could be, which is consequence. How do we go about doing a risk assessment? Risk assessment comprises the following 4 stages, namely identify, assess, control, and review. This standard process is widely used throughout all industry and is relevant for all work activities. These steps form a cycle, which means that the risk assessment process is never a static one-off activity, but should be carried out throughout a project life cycle. Step 1 is the identify stage. It involves understanding what our hazards are and who can be harmed by it. We can visualize this stage as understanding the background of the hazard. Stage 2 is the assess stage. We dive deeper into the hazard, where we look to assign a risk level to the hazard to have some means of measuring or benchmarking risk. Here, we will need to think of questions such as what is the extent of damage, or how many can be hurt by this hazard. What are the root causes, and how likely is event to happen? Step 3 is the control stage. Now that we have a good baseline understanding of hazards and its potential impact, we can now look to implement risk reduction barriers or perform modifications to reduce risk. Can the causes be eliminated? How do we stop it from happening? Finally, Step 4 is the review stage. At this stage, we evaluate the performance of risk controls. Are some controls performing better than the others? Also, we will consider how our risks may have changed. New information, new hazards. Next, why do we perform risk assessment? There are plenty of benefits to perform risk assessment associated with a facility. Performing a risk assessment for different risk reduction options allow us to weigh the improvement in risk levels against their costs. The finding of a risk assessment allows us to identify key risk drivers or key risk areas which will lead to a more targeted approach for risk reduction. Risk assessment may also be performed as part of HSE cases or safety cases to demonstrate that the risk of operation is kept to as low as reasonably practicable. Thank you. I hope you find this information helpful and see you in the next.